Hi, and welcome to the interview segment of Brothers in Death. And as I said in the previous video, I wanted to start at the beginning. And that beginning is birth, the portal that we all come into the world through. And I could not think of a better person to mine the wisdom of, to have a conversation of, to swim in the waters of birth than who I'm joined by today, Lianne Schwartz. Welcome.
Thanks, James. Really good to be here.
Lianne is a little magical, I would say. She and I have known each other now for over a decade. She has attended over 1,000 births, I think we worked out last time. 2 of those being the birth of Lila and Latham, my daughter and son, and has the incredible capacity to, no matter what state I'm in or Megan's in, pre-birth or during birth, if we're in our head all over the place, of just having us leave feeling so calm and grounded. So I wanted to start the interview today just by saying thank you.
It's been an honor. Right from that first preconception meeting, all the way keeping his 2 babies.
The preconception meeting is actually a great place to start because I was thinking about the interview and I was thinking about the role of midwives in myth and story, and they're almost always a little magical, right? They have this magical, witchy air about them. And we sat down with you before being pregnant just to speak to you about, we're thinking about conceiving and we wanted to get the lay of the land and if we could work with you and if it was a fit. And you went and called your friend that evening and said, I just had an interview with this couple. I don't think they know they're pregnant, but they are.
That's right.
So we were by about 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, where do you think this magical aspect of, where did it come from? Why is it imbued with midwifery?
I think part of it is magic, and part of it is actually that there are probably all these signs that I and other midwives are picking up on that are below the level of our conscious awareness. So who knows what it was? Is it pure intuition? Is it, smell changes, subtle changes in the body, something? Is it the baby calling to me? Because often it's the baby that calls out first. And, most of us know, say if someone else walks in the room, even if you don't hear it, you feel when someone comes in. And so it's the same with the baby. They're a human presence, just the same as any of us. So we feel it. When you're attuned with that to a baby, you feel their presence coming in the room, just like you would any other human. So I think it's a combination of that. And it's the intuitive side, but the baby, herself in that case, saying hi. And then, that actual, probably scientific, different things that are adding up in my head that are not conscious of, but all of that together is saying it's over there.
I think this is quite indicative of your work, the way that you answer that question, because it's almost like someone can describe, someone just had an energy about them, right? And it's true, they're feeling something energetically, but someone that knew NLP or body language or facial reasoning could give you the exact reason why the culmination of that felt like energy. And you have the background, very deep background in the medicinal Western side, and you have a very deep background in the holistic midwifery side. And I love those 2 things that come together. For me, in particular, is when we were going through the process of preparation and how to be ready and what happens and where it goes. It was so nice for my brain to relax into the details so that I could experience the deeper waters. And it's actually, an interesting point. So this is on men and birth. And we seem to lack for men any form of ritual or rite of passage in the West. There are traditionally, and still in indigenous cultures, there have been many. And at least what I can read about it, in the 60s, 90% of men weren't involved with birth at all.
That's right.
Now, thankfully, it's the other way around. But what seems to have replaced rite and ritual is a focus on all of the details and the ABC and the emergency plan at the cost of feeling the emotion of what's going on. And I definitely felt that when preparing for Lila. And I wonder if you can say a few words on that.
I agree. I think a lot of birth preparation for men is focused around what you should do for the woman. What traditionally goes wrong, there's things that can go wrong. This is what you have to be prepared for in the external environment. And I think all of those things are necessary. what's often forgotten is that men are going through a rite of passage just through their partner being pregnant and going through the birth and meeting their babies for the first time. Because we talk so much about it as a rite of passage for women, which it is so naturally, that it's hard for men to actually connect in, even emotionally. That's what's happening. Changes are happening as you become a father, as you know, and they're happening during the pregnancy, and those can be quite strong, actually, because you have all these hormones that are actually changing inside of you as well, when you're involved. And the key thing is for many men who's not the awareness that involvement is what makes the difference in them creating that sort of natural rite of passage, let's say, going into fatherhood. So men in pregnancy can connect with the baby emotionally almost in a similar way as women can. In fact, I've looked after some couples where it's been very hard for the woman to connect to her own baby, whereas the dad is just there as that, almost stepping in as primary caregiver and giving that emotional support to the baby. And you really see it, like you see, much like you with both babies, you put your hand on, the baby comes up to your hand, moves. There's this very clear connection. There's an awareness there from Lila and Latham. Hi, Dad. It's like, I know you. You're a familiar person. And so that's, you started that whole inner rite of passage, because when you feel that happening, what happens, you don't even realize it. All these changes happen. This is a being I'm going to look after. I want to provide for them. I want to change things inside of me emotionally. I want to be like or not be like my own father. So it sets off all of things as you start that bonding process. When there isn't an emphasis on that bonding process, it gets tricky, because it's almost like what's your place as a man? You're not looking at physical changes. You're not there with weight sickness and changing body and everything. So you can kind of just be a, kind of a third wheel. It's so fascinating to me how I really wish all men could know how important they are to their baby and their partner during pregnancy and during birth. Like, it really is the thing that makes the difference between birth being challenging and feeling good, or the whole transition overall, feeling stable or feeling uncertain and feeling shaky. And for the baby, it's really, the best way that you just do it on a visceral level. If you imagine you're a baby, so just imagine you're a little baby, and you're listening, just imagine there you are as a baby. And just imagine a father's hands and arms cuddling you as a little baby, and how that feels. What does that feel like to have a father's arms and hands? And then you imagine a mother's arms, and they're so different.
So different.
Right, and we need that difference. And every baby needs that difference of caregiver, and that starts right back at the pregnancy. So in that preparation side, yes, you need to know the ABCs and what's going to happen in the stages of labor. But more than that, ideally, you need to be starting to actually connect with the mom, with the baby, right from the beginning. Because babies sense men who are close to them from day one. It's hard to tell really from day one. I say day one, but research shows us certainly from a few weeks in that babies respond to their own father's hand completely differently than any other person or a different man. Babies that are having physiological upset in the womb, their heart rate, if something's going not quite right, often during pregnancy or labor, father puts the hand on the belly, heart rate comes down. So that physiological effect, understanding that, helps to be able to say, yes, I want to connect in this other way, not just in the sort of standard birth preparation way.
It's so interesting you say that, because there's so many studies done. It's unequivocal that having the father at the birth means less interventionism in a traditional birth setting in a hospital. So that's really clear, but whenever I read that study, it's saying because they're there in support of the mother, which of course is part of it, right? But I love this extra layer of actually they're there in support of the baby feels them and they're coming through. And the other thing I notice when you speak is the same topic of less obvious rites of passage for men and the need for them to be created. So with women there is the menstrual cycle and there's menopause, which are two undeniable ones, whereas men can easily deny these big moments of recognizing a transition from boy to man, from man to elder, or what it might be. And it really seems the same here. And I know I've spoken to many men, and to some extent I was this with the first birth. In lieu of the deeper energetic bonding in pregnancy, what would happen is the focus on the ABCs and logistics would be so all-encompassing and necessary that when the baby was born, there's no deep sense of love. I spoke to a father that didn't feel it for 9 months after the birth. And I really think these two things are related, right? Because they got the logistics ready, logistics done, here's the baby. Oh, this actually had nothing to do with the...
Yeah, this wasn't what I was talking about. I was talking about a process,
Exactly.
not a person.
Exactly. So then what are some ways that men watching this that might be getting ready to go into this portal, that have a partner that is pregnant, what are some ways that they can start connecting beyond that logistical level to their unborn baby?
So, it's funny that we might have, my first answer to that question is not to do with the baby. And it's actually that men start connecting with themselves first. Because you need to know yourself. Even to the level of how do I want to be, feel I want to be as a father? Who am I as a man? Who am I? Because then you start to differentiate who am I, who were my parents, how did that impact me? So even that, which just, I'm not talking about going to therapy for years. I'm talking about just the inner being with self. Because from that self of this is who I am, then you can connect with another being, which brings me to the baby. So, you said babies know their fathers. They absolutely know their fathers. So that connection can start really from very early on. Some of it can be purely emotional. You can just literally thinking about the baby. But that actual hands-on connection makes a huge difference. So there's lots of studies showing loving touch, like just literally a hand on the belly, that the baby will more and more just come and move to touch your hand. They'll give you these clear signs of like, yeah, I know you're there, hi. I've also seen so many times where babies will, for example, move positions after, baby's been in an uncomfortable, position that we know might be more difficult for birth. And dad puts their hand on, and it's just sort of quietly talking to the baby. And maybe the mom's been doing all these meditations and trying to get the baby to turn in different positions. Dad's hand sort of saying it's safe, it's okay, it's okay for you to turn, and the baby will just come into position. I've seen that many times. Even with my own second pregnancy, she was in a bridge position with her feet extended down like this, which is a difficult position for birth. And her dad had been born breech, which was quite a traumatic birth. And I was doing everything to talking with her and positions and all the things to get her to move. And as I was just sitting talking with her in the womb, communicating with her, I just saw an image of her dad's mom, her grandma, and I thought, it's the trauma she's holding. So I asked my husband, her dad, to say, just to talk to her and say, this is your own birth. You don't have to repeat my patterns. You have your own birth. And she turned within a day.
That's wild.
So, that's getting obviously a little bit more esoteric. We're talking about more talking about getting into turn, but that's just to show how responsive they are. And the reason they talk about that is so that you can, when you're just putting your, you're just laying your hand on your belly, something's happening even if you can't really feel it. And it can be hard. I think as a man, you can feel so separate to it. So then to know that even if it seems like nothing was happening, that hand makes a huge difference, or that feeling of love that the baby's receiving from you, then that makes a difference. I think it's really important to know that. Also, singing to the baby, talking to the baby. It's beautiful studies showing that when you sing to the baby, then the babies recognize that song. And I've seen it so many times when there's a particular song, especially when I have musician partners, and the dad sings a particular song, and then after the baby's born, when there could be the crying spell or whenever, the dad will play that song, and the baby just settles. It's like they just know that song because they can hear it in the womb.
This is why Latham likes Justin Bieber so much.
You have to be careful. Be a little careful what you listen to.
Every time I like big butts, and again, it just comes right down.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, that's true. And some of that happens because the woman gets into a relaxed state. So some of it is mediated through her body. And that's why the more that, as a man, you look after your partner's mental, emotional, physical health during pregnancy, the more she associates that feeling of settledness, of care, of love with you, then of course the baby does too automatically. So it is, some of it has to be through her, because her body is literally the vessel. And on such deep levels, because hormonally the baby is experiencing everything she experiences. So every loving gesture that she receives, the baby receives that as well hormonally. So it can be a really nice way to think about just those little, either loving touch or just any of those little gestures during pregnancy that you're literally giving to your baby at the same time. It's not that babies need to receive that all the time. You know, babies are going to go through the whole range of emotions. They're going to have anxiety and upset, and they need that whole range of emotions. Just in order for them to develop, they start to learn, oh, this is how you deal with emotions. So you actually want them to have the full range. You don't want a womb that's perfectly calm all the time. In fact, one of the reasons we can't do artificial womb is because they need to feel all these human experiences. You can't learn unless you experience it through a human emotional system.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah. But of course, you want the baby to associate you with calm and love and support and her feeling safe so that you have that connection with the baby. So talking with the baby, sitting with the baby, loving hands, and loving care to the mama are really the best ways. But again, within this framework of really like who am I as a man, who am I as a father, and doing the inner work that's necessary. You know, most people know or aware if they've got a challenging background, that's going to impact them. It's going to impact how they are as a father and mother, of course. So being willing to look at that is probably the biggest gift you can give your baby. And it also gives the space to be able to really be there, because you're not just stuck in repeating patterns. You're actually there truly whole as a person there with your baby. So we have the physical bonding, the emotional bonding in that context of letting go of patterns, doing the inner work.
I love that. You know, I just did a men's retreat with a friend of mine, Jan, and it involves boxing and fighting, but also like deep reflection. And after these kind of peak moments we sat down, we talked about the fatherhood. And, you know, there's men ranging from, I guess, 30 to 40. So everyone's in their 30s. That's, you know, 3 decades on Earth, and there wasn't a single dry eye in the room speaking about these experiences and moments and these hurts and these pains. And I get the sense that they're not had some light poured on them. I don't know if you can get rid of them. Actually, I'm pretty sure you can't. But if they had some light poured on them, they will for sure come out sideways in some way. And the other thing that I think was valuable from my experience, and maybe for the men watching, is the difference between touch and touch. And the imagery that came to my mind is like, you can walk through a forest but not see a single tree, right? So you can be in your going mood, you're doing a walk to somewhere, doing something, and your mind is somewhere else, and you're in this beautiful nature. Or you can have that feeling that's like a long Sunday afternoon, sitting in the sun on the blanket, and really be with the tree or be with nature, and let it impact you. And I say that because if you're working while your partner's pregnant, if you're taking care of the house, you know, she's working and taking care of the house. There's a lot of things going on, and it can feel like, okay, touch is another thing on the checklist.
Yeah.
Just like getting the go bag is on the checklist, so it's like, okay, 10-minute touch. Okay, I've done my touch.
Yeah.
But it's not that. It's really taking a moment, stop and feel. And I'd love to hear your opinion, but for me it almost feels more like a listening than a doing. It's like yes, I want my baby to feel me, but actually what I'm doing is letting my baby impact me. Does that?
Beautifully put. Yeah, it is a receiving. I'm really glad you said that, because it's not, it can be a checklist for some families. It just works better to go, have we sat down together and really connected as a family, even in a pregnancy, you know, that could be partner, you know, would demand, but also could be with the baby. So it can be part of a checklist, because I don't want to discount that. Sometimes that's needed.
Sure.
And if it's done as okay, I've done that, yeah, it's basically useless. So it's a receiving and a giving. You know, it's that feeling, that mutual, just like any really meaningful touch. You know, any meaningful touch in life, it's not cursory. It's that you're there and you're aware of both the giving of and the way you're receiving. You know, it's like you're there, hopefully with love, and you're feeling whatever you're feeling for the other person. So it is, yeah, it's that giving or receiving, and definitely a focus on the listening and knowing what's the baby wanting to communicate with you.
You know, a fun way to do it as well is listen by seeing what images come up, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember that in a talk that you recommended us.
Yeah.
It was one of the things, you just put your hand and you listen for a little while. If you a little while and an image comes up, like, where did that image of coconut come from? You know, like, it's really interesting. And then it becomes this kind of a chiron moment where time gets a bit squishy. So just to kind of recap at least the pregnancy part, it seems like In the West, the traditional rite of passage that is experienced by our great ancestors and still many indigenous cultures in the world has disappeared, being replaced by the man being present at the birth, which it wasn't before, which is a good thing, but also replaced by the long list of logistics and making sure everything's handled, that can often be a way to distance from the emotion of the thing. So the logistics are necessary. Beyond that, the question is, well then, how can I sink into the experience and not just show up, but like deeply show up for my partner and for the baby? And that starts with reflecting on who you are. It could be journaling or meditating, or you could work with a coach or go to a retreat or whatever it is. But just to shed some light on who do I want to be as a father? Who don't I want to be as a father? Creating moments of conscious listening and presence with the baby, and that will support the partner and the baby and you in some of the most nourishing. Singing, choosing a song, whatever it might be. So these are some ways that the father can kind of recreate his own rite of passage. I'll throw into the mix a father's blessing.
Definitely.
Which has become more and more commonplace, at least in Ubud. I don't know about the rest of the world. But it's, it's the same thing as a mother's blessing. But, for me, having 4 or 5 of my closest friends sit, we just spoke about what it was either to be a father or to be fathered, and shared some poems, and they had some reflections. And there was something that was like, everything's clicking into one. So beyond the pregnancy,
and I love that one. Since we jump for a minute, it can be as casual as a couple of friends sitting around, or a proper blessing like you have, or a big, more of a ceremonial thing. It doesn't matter so much, but what the sort of feeling I like fathers to have, in the same way as mothers have, but of course that's happening automatically as well. It's like you're joining the ranks, it's like joining the circle of fathers. It's like saying, you've got your place now. Come on, you've got your place.
Well, it's interesting you say that. And Megan and I's commitment ceremony, and this was a couple of years before we fell pregnant, the doors to fatherhood opened up, because we were circled up in this commitment ceremony, and one of the reflections from Brad was simply, the father in me sees the father in you. And I was like, oof. But I never really, it hit me in some way where the door was just cracked open a little.
Can I just talk about that a little bit? Because just the door cracking open, because one thing I've had many times is babies come to men earlier, sometimes before they've met their partners, or sometimes they're together like that may have been the children, sort of going, knock on the door there, we're going to open this for you now. You need a little time, you need a couple of years to think about this.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes clearly when they recognize it as, this baby talking to me, or I have this little thing talking to me. I've said that a number of times, and sometimes with men who are very, let's say, mainstream in their thinking or consciousness otherwise, who have said, this baby is here with me, and I can't explain it. And I'm like, that's normal. That's okay.
We had that conception really, we know the date and time, and it was so clear that there was something there, and knocking on that door, And it's so cute now. I've never really retrospectively thought of, because then it's just an unknown baby. We have Lila. It's really cute to go back and be like, oh, it's her.
That's right.
And then for any man out there listening that has a skeptical hat on, I know that hat so well. And I'd say, A, just try it on, and B, if any moment in life has magic, it's birth.
Exactly.
Right? There's just so much this unknowing. Literally in the science of it, there's so much we don't know.
So much we don't know, and what we think we know changes regularly.
All of the time.
So, even just the conception journey, right?
Yeah.
That one thing, talk about that just for a moment, because I just love that, because what I learned, many years ago was there's big rays and all the sperm are competing against each other, right? Now we know that some science, this isn't fully determined yet, that has even gotten down to a number. 12 sperm come and prepare the egg in the 13th sperm. That's still debated, but what we do know for sure is that it's not a competition. The sperm are all helping each other, so they sort of line the passage, and the egg won't open until the right egg. And they don't know, other than the one research that looked at the numbers, they don't know what that is. But it could be all these sperm, and what they're seeing now is that sort of preparing it, and then the egg opens when the right sperm is there. So it's the opposite of competition. It's like they're all working together to get the right one in the right place.
It's definitely not capitalism.
Definitely not. And so even when you look at, when you know the science is, it starts to change, when you know it isn't what you thought it was, it starts to change the way you think about everything, because a lot of things in humanity we've thought about as competition and driven in that way. We know now it's not that at all. That isn't how the world works. Wouldn't have survived if everything was competition, because we have to be interdependent as humans. It doesn't work otherwise. You can't be a solitary human and survive very long. We have to be independent, and so it makes sense that right from our very beginnings, even in the primal journey, any sperm, that there's that interdependence and working together, and let's create the best outcome, which is,
such a different way to frame and hold life.
Right. Yeah. And it's true. It's like scientifically true.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. And so beyond the pregnancy journey, you get into the moment of birth itself. And I guess I'd love to hear, what are the common mistakes that men make in that moment of birth? And then we'll go on to the best things we can do.
Yeah. Pull it back slightly to the pregnancy. Sure. Because, we talked about the detection of the baby in terms of the pregnancy. And you know this very well because having two babies together, men have a huge role in that birth preparation.
Yeah.
A huge role. Because you are basically a safe person for her body. The midwife is as well, but no one's ever going to be as safe for her as the father of her baby can be. Because you're, you are the genetic half of what she's carrying. So you give her body a sense of safety that no one else and nothing else can. But most of us during pregnancy, and most of us in relationships, there's not sort of a means of touch that would naturally lend itself to birth. It's often casual touch or sexual touch or, just these different types of touch. But often during labor, women want either very calm, solid touch, which I'll talk more about that, or more therapeutic touch, especially if people are in a context where they don't have their midwife, maybe they're in a hospital or birth center and they just have whoever. That means the man's going to be their main support person. That means he might need to be very hands-off massage and things because he might be the only person. And so starting all of those things during the pregnancy makes a huge difference. Because then, as you did, the two of you, when you've done enough massages and different ways of working with her body, it's like your body develop a language that's not sexual, but it's not casual. It's that sort of in between. That her body is naturally relaxed so many times to your touch in that specific way. But then during labor, it just happens naturally. Because to expect to go from learning about birth to then you're just in the birth situation and to be able to have any skilled touch, it's not going to happen. You need to practice that during the pregnancy. So it's well worth it. Practical birth preparation is well worth it. Just learning just different ways. And some of that can be learning, of course, but some of it can also just be what feels good. Yeah. Just really experimenting. Like she can tell you what actually feels good and what kind of touch feels good. Yeah. And not doing that at 39.5 weeks, kind of going, okay, we gotta touch you because you're gonna have a baby soon, but really starting that earlier in the pregnancy. I recommend ideally, especially the first thing, that couples have 20 minutes together every day, doing that kind of physical touch, potentially listening to a guided birth visualization or something, but just doing something towards the pregnancy in those last couple of months, because then you are a team going into the birth. But without that, it's hard to suddenly line up just for the moment of birth if you haven't been intentional together. And it's not exactly, some of it's skill-based. It's not exactly skill, though. It's more like creating that resonance between the two of you into a new kind of experience together. Yeah. And some of that is similar to sexuality. Some of it's similar to other aspects of a relationship. It's how bringing them together. So yeah, preparation for birth, what we're going to talk about, starts in pregnancy.
Yeah, what strikes me is this image where I think a lot of men naturally view the processes of pregnancy and birth as here's the woman and here's me supporting my partner, right? And understandable, a lot of things to do. But actually what it is, it's together and moving through it. Together you're bringing the baby into the world. And that's a really big difference. Yeah. So for me, body work that we were doing and you taught us was part of this process of coming closer and closer and letting our systems mesh.
Exactly.
And what I'd say for men is if you have a body work or a massage or maybe some kind of yoga background, you can probably intuitively feel and explore it by asking what the partner likes. If you don't, and that kind of non-sexual, non-bro like touch, if you haven't, find someone to teach you something.
I mean, that's why I created my course.
Right, I was going to say, go to Lianne's course, find a teacher, whatever it is, because it's okay to not know what to do if you haven't done before, and it is a foreign, if you don't have experience in that form of touch, it's a really foreign way to think. And it's really important to keep it separate from sexual. Sex, maybe we can talk about that as well, that'd be a great thing to talk about. They're really important to keep it separate from sex, and this is one of those things that Megan and I actually just said, we're going to do, it's either 15 or 20 minutes of it a day in the last few months of pregnancy, and we did make it a checklist, because like it was just so important to do. And there was so much going on that if we didn't prioritize it as something that got done, like in our calendar, then it would have been very easy to slip by the wayside. But it is very important.
That kind of made I recommend having a checklist, and then what you do inside of it is more connected.
Exactly. You put the structure in the container on, and then you can go into the softer spaces in between. Exactly. Which is really helpful for my brain at the end of a long day of working and, for the second kid, taking care of one kid. I'm exhausted. If I see that there's an open-ended form of massage or anything, it's going to be really hard to do at 8 p.m. at night. But if I know it's 15 minutes and I remember its importance, I can do anything with it.
Exactly. And one of the importance, I think, to remember, as we talked about before, is that when you do that with your partner, the baby is receiving all of those good hormones. So you are bonding with the baby directly because her body is just like, this is so juicy and yummy and nice, right? And the baby's going, this guy is great. Hormonally, the baby's going, I like it. Let's keep him.
And also, there's a bit like, when every time I slip into that space, I feel way better afterwards anyway. So it's like, it's not just for the baby or just for the mother, it's also just for the sanity of the father too.
And can I talk about that for a moment and prepare you for birth? Because a lot of men will think, I'm just going to work and work and work until the baby's born. Get out the step down and now I'm going to be off whatever for however long until the baby's born. And I'll talk about this again, but birth needs men to be in a relaxed state. Relatively. We're not to be perfect. But basically, the more stress hormones and adrenaline that you bring into the birth, the more difficult her birth is going to be. So it is so important that men take whatever is needed in order to get to that birth already feeling good. Like, as a midwife, I sometimes say, one of my most important roles is that I feel good and calm, most of the time, or that I'm not so depleted that I can't in a few minutes get into a good space. Because if I get called to a birth and I'm in this stressful state, I'm going to actually negatively impact the woman and baby, the whole situation. And it's a symptom. And it's so many men are going, I'm going to work, and then they get to the birth and they're exhausted and they're stressed, and it's like they would be better off going and taking a nap. They're actually not helping the situation because they're bringing stress hormones in.
Not even just not helping, adversely affecting.
Exactly.
Yeah, and a way to think about it is, even if your partner isn't, if you're a stressed nut and you had a busy day and you walk through the door carrying that energy, just notice what your partner does. It's going to be a closure of her system, even if it's just a little, as opposed to you take 20 minutes before walking in the door and you look at a tree, you take some deep breaths and you walk in open and calm, and that will open us just 9 times out of 10. And birth is basically, or being pregnant, at least from this side of it, is an amplifier of everything else that's already going on. So suddenly she has this massive antenna that was already sensitive beforehand, but now it's extra sensitive for everything else. So I think it's a really valuable point to manage your energy and the workload, that even if you have to work, and many of you will have to work, that when you're consciously bringing your energy to her at different moments leading up to the birth.
And doing it as a gift for yourself as well. That's how do you want to be when you create your baby? Stressed out, exhausted, end of the tether, or really open and relaxed and ready.
It's so funny, this phenomenon. I think this happens to mums and dads, but the idea of birth is so consuming that I didn't really think about it. The next 80 years, there's so much focus on this thing. It's like, oh yeah, I can't rest now. This is not the time for rest. There's a lot more to do. Can we speak to sex while pregnant a little?
Yeah.
What do you have to say on sex while pregnant?
it's such an individual subject. It's the biggest thing to know really for men that I think is pretty well out there now is that hormones are real. They are going to be like this during pregnancy and postpartum. And it's just so variable what women want in terms of their own arousal and desire during pregnancy. Some women are on fire. They've never felt so aroused in their life. They're just, because there's more blood flow, everything's happening, they're just like daily, as much as you can, let's go. Other women, they go very inward and it just doesn't feel right. Sometimes I found, I've had a few times where women really had this strong, don't want to have sex, and they have had just some things with their cervix where it's a little bit of a sensitive pregnancy, like physically. So it's been better for them to actually not just have anything, and not have orgasms, not just penetration. But this, like every other time in a woman's life, but way amplified, a lot of it depends on that emotional connection.
Yeah.
So sometimes what I've seen in pregnancy is, emotions are up and down, hormonal or morning sickness or whatever else is going on. And then men are feeling maybe a little bit rejected or abandoned. And then there's this sort of little push-pull that's happening. And then instead of being this nice open coming together, even if it's, let's say it's initially going to be just for connection, cuddles, or it's going to be just slow sex, or just, connecting physically, sexually, but not towards orgasm, or, it could be, and it becomes this sort of like, oh, you don't have sex with me, or you just want sex, that sort of battle. Because especially during pregnancy, if that emotional connection isn't there, most women, even if they made it before, a lot of women have a habit of having sex, even if they don't necessarily want to. Often that stops during pregnancy. So if there isn't already a habit of deeper communication, then you get these two people, and he's going, but you love to have sex before what happened. And she actually didn't. She just wasn't willing to say it, but many women, when they get pregnant, they're kind of going, not willing anymore.
Yeah, there's somebody else to fight for.
Exactly.
Yeah, like it's really striking that like so many things, this tree is best planted 20 years ago, and that whatever current dynamic, because that dynamic of push-pull and feeling rejected that exists regardless of pregnancy in so many couples.
Yeah.
So the best time to work on that is even before you're pregnant,
Yeah.
and having regular love dates, as we call them. And the point about it being so individual. There's no blanket statement we can make on this. At least from our experience, it was amazing. Like, it was basically like after the first trimester. It was basically full-time ovulation.
Yeah.
And there was none of the up and down that usually helps with the full cycle.
And it is like that. When there's a good emotional connection, it's more likely to be like that.
Yeah, and I can't help but think it's going to be so helpful for birth. Right, because it's the same opening and blood flow, and to have a deep orgasm, you have to relax and let go,
It is. It's as separate things. Penetration is really good. It's just preparing pelvic floor, because the pelvic floor of the woman naturally contracts and opens during the whole process. So penetration is good. Her having an orgasm is good. In late pregnancies, though, do not usually happen at the same time. Just positionally, it's awkward. Yeah. So generally, you're going to have penetration. You're going to have her having an orgasm separately or cleverly.
Yeah.
It's not going to be just a little bit of this and she has an orgasm usually in late pregnancy. So you have to be creative normally in the last few weeks especially. But yeah, and actually, before I forget, I want to say there are a few pregnancy myths that I think some men worry about. Not just to remind me, thinking about penetration and pregnancy, because many men are concerned, like, am I going to hurt the baby? Am I hitting the baby's head?
I'm just so big. I'm what?
Or just, is this okay?
Yeah.
I think that sort of feeling of like there's a baby there and I'm having sex. It's not a weird thing.
And $100 question.
Yeah. So I think it's just so important to know it's so healthy and normal. And in fact, baby, again, when we look at the physiology of babies, everything in their system relaxes and feels better when their parents are making love. Wow. And it makes sense, right? Because all her hormones are good. It's this pleasurable experience, hopefully, it's connecting. They're feeling the bond with the parents coming together. So babies like it on a physiological level, and there's no penis I've met yet that's gonna do any harm in there. Of course, she needs to be in a position that feels good, not There's that uncomfortable stop, but there's no point in pregnancy. I've had couples love making in a birth pool in labor. There's no point where you should stop in the parents' comfort. But yeah, and sometimes I often get questions about that. Just, is this okay? Is this normal? And, I have way more desire because she's pregnant, or I have no desire because she's pregnant. Both of those are fine, normal, but also kind of go, okay, if I have no desire, what's actually going on? Like, what are my views on motherhood? Am I changing my views about this woman I love because she's a mother now? And can I still see her as sexual even when she's a mother? Just to have that introspection. These things are changing for her, and it's actually because of pregnancy, because it's nothing inherent about, in fact, as you experience pregnancy and birth, because they can all add to your erotic life, right? Or they can make it more, even with all the challenges. Especially postpartum.
I think what's really key, or at least key for us, was really celebrating Megan's body. And it was a daily thing for me. That was a conscious effort. And it's not to be mistaken with making up lies about her weight.
Yeah.
It's not it. It's a difference even without pregnancy between being like, oh, you look beautiful today, and being like, I love the way the light's reflecting in your eye. It's really noticing, it's like the curve of the belly or the swelling on the breasts or whatever, noticing something specific on a daily basis was such a gift to our connection, our love life during pregnancy. And there's always something to celebrate.
Love that you've said that. And I just think it's so important. And I think you're right. There's always something to celebrate. And it is beautiful in a very feminine way, as you're getting better, curvy, everything's juicier.
And as a guy, you need to experience having 3 or 4 different women in your one partnership, because they feel totally different the whole way through. I think it's a really beautiful thing, and some of our lovemaking during the pregnancy it was just so much fun and so connecting, so helpful, I think, to the overall experience.
But that would have made her open up so much more. That feeling of you love this rather than this changing is okay.
And I think if any of the men, and I think we're finished on sex here at least, but do have that struggle with seeing a mother as sexual, the partner as a mother being sexual, or have any challenges, then take support. I don't think that's on her. It's not on her to solve that one. Exactly. And it's not on her to really bring that to until you work through some of it, in which you can bring in a way that's blaming her somehow without taking responsibility. So find a midwife that knows, or speak to a coach, or speak to someone to find a way through that to recognize the inherent beauty.
Yeah, beautiful.
Should we go to the
birth? Yes.
Yeah. What are some of the common mistakes that men make during birth?
So the first common mistake I would say is what I talked about before. It's arriving at that moment stressed, anxious, and fearful. That is the number one mistake, actually. And I might describe why hormonally that's the number one mistake, because I think if you can understand it, it's easier to understand, okay, this is why I don't want to do that, And the reason is our bodies are exactly the same now as they were when we were cave people. And when we were cave people, so let's picture Megan goes into labor. You're standing at the front of the cave, with your staff or whatever else, your furs.
You see it very clearly.
Yeah. And she's back there laboring, behind you somewhere. And you are looking out for wild animals because you do labor. It's a very vulnerable time, right? And so your body and the way our human bodies work, it doesn't transmits things very quickly. So if there was something coming that was going to potentially hurt her, you would need to transmit that information, which happens through hormones like adrenaline, other catecholamines, back to her so that her body responds and stops labor instantaneously, right? So that whole system is still in play.
Of course.
But now it's, did I pay that thing, or have I finished that thing at work, or what's happening with this, but same hormonal inputs that's signaling to her body, stop the labor, or if it's too late, occasionally the body will just push labor in quickly. But normally it's stop the labor. And the problem, what happens, and you hear so many times these days, women have labors that just go on and they don't progress. And what's happening is, one part of her body, baby, is saying, I'm ready to be born, let's go. So they're starting to open everything. Then the other hormonal signals coming possibly from her body, possibly from the partner, are saying, it's not safe, close down. But those two start competing, because there's a certain point when your body will just stop the labor, because there's a lot of animal and you have to run.
Yep.
But at a certain point, the baby's going, no, I need to be born, you know, like this has got to happen now. So then you have these contractions that just go on forever, they're extremely painful, but there's no dilation happening because there's not the safety in her body. Because birth depends on safety. Because we're mammals, same as any other mammal.
Sure.
All mammals have different ways of giving birth. Like everyone knows how cats, go in a corner. If a cat gets disturbed, their labor will stop, and if a kid's halfway being born, when they get disturbed, that kid will die. That's how severe safety is in mammals for birth. But we're the same. But what in making us safe or not safe are so subtle now. They're emotional more than physical. Most people, it can happen that people are in a physical safety situation, but it's less likely.
Sure.
It's usually going to be an emotional, energetic feeling of safety, but the body responds in exactly the same way.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. So I really like men to literally think of themselves as, guarding the cave, and like they're there, transmitting safety, ideally. So
The cave is not just the way less of the physical space, but the internal space that the man is experiencing.
Yeah.
And guys, there's so much that you could worry about.
It's endless.
It's not just, it's really, it's not just the work and the bills, but in birth and labor, and it's a real, if you're bent toward worry, it's a real conscious choice to be like, I'm not letting that in right now, right? And for me, Reb Joe says, worry is prayer backwards, right? So rather than worry, if you notice it, and that's the time to bring in trust and faith. That could be in your own system, your babies, your wives, your support crew, your midwife, or your doctor. But that is the cave to guard, is the trust cave.
Exactly. I love that.
Okay. So that's number one. So you have to live in your own system filled with trust rather than anxiety.
Yeah.
What else?
Number two mistake is that I see a lot of men who so let's say, I was in labor here and I don't want you to touch me. I'm doing my thing, I'm deep in it. So you're like, okay, I better go do something useful then. So you get up and do something useful. My body, I feel abandoned.
Yeah.
But to you, you're like, well, I wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
So the second biggest mistake I see is men not realizing how valuable their presence is. That they may be doing things, like they might be in there massaging like the best of them, or whispering or reassuring them in her ear, but you might be just sitting there. Or you might be just literally like touching her hand or hand on her back, something very subtle, but it's giving her that sense of, it's safe, he's got me. Because that's what we want our body to feel in labor is, like he's got me, I'm safe, everything's okay, I can birth this baby as mammals. So the mistake is thinking you have to be useful. And the solution is just being with her. Unless she specifically says, don't be here. And again, it's not like you talked about before, it's not being there just with like, okay, or worse, the odd giggle of what's happening. So it's deep presence. You can be present with the baby, you can be present with her, you can be present not touching with your full open heart. But often we'll want just that casual touch, but again, how casual touch can be really annoying if someone's like nervously doing this? Not that kind of touch, the deep present touch, loving connected touch like we talked about before.
And that's where the preparation brings
Exactly.
so valuable to bring in these times. That's really needed.
Because if you've been working all your life and you haven't sat and been present with somebody quietly for hours on end, it's really hard to do that for the first time in labor. So you have to practice this. Because otherwise it's going to feel like, this is not the same thing. It's like jittery, I want to go do something. He's not the kind of presence I'm talking about. And it's not that a man has to become a Zen master. They just have to care about what's happening with their partner in labor. That's all. And when you care, you're looking at everyone, wow. Then the only challenge is being with your own discomfort. It's hard to be with someone who's in pain, right? So having ways to manage, this is a theme that will keep coming up, because having ways to manage your own inner discomfort and bring yourself back to a place of calm is key. It's key for pregnancy, it's key for birth, and it's key for fathering. So this is a skill that's not just, everything we teach for birth is a skill you're going to use forever. Whether it's touch, you might not use that exact massage technique, but that kind of touch that you're learning, the breath, the presence, those are all things that you're going to take into your relationship and fathering forever.
I think this is why it's so valuable to have the backup plan clear and to trust the expert that you're working with. Because I want to trust them fully to say something is escalated. You need to go, well, we had home birth, so we need to go to the hospital. If I trust them fully with that, then I can let that go. And I know every other worry is causing a disharmony for my partner and for the baby. Where I really do actually want to be the banks in the scenario. I really do want to be the one that's holding space for everything that's occurring. Because I know for sure, at least having done it, Megan will go through moments of doubt and pain and the whole gamut of experience. And if I fall down into that worry and that gamut of pain, she's got no one to trust to let her body to open up. But if I know that I can trust my plan B and I can trust my expert to know when something really needs to shift and happen, and if that hasn't happened, then everything else I can stay a container for without corrosing into my own worry, which is the worst thing that I could do in that moment.
And if I could talk about your first birth, which I think has a perfect example. There was a moment of, we're not where we thought we were. We're not where we want to be. And it's like, there's a little bit of, can I do this? Painful. And you were just rock solid. Like you really maintained that solid presence that allowed her to have her feelings validated because she's went through the most intense experience of her life. So it's not to not validate that. Her experience is completely valid, everything she's feeling. And it also got, and it's okay, I'm still got you. Well, let's go, we can do this.
Yeah.
And of course, it was not that long, really.
No.
Before she was born.
100%.
Yeah. Sometimes, though, I think it's important because you were able to create a team that you really trusted. That's not always possible for people. Culture is often not, in fact, because people are often in situations where you don't get to choose. If you're with a particular practice, midwifery practice or obstetric practice, you're going to have whoever's on call. So you might trust them overall, but you don't necessarily trust the details of their care.
Of course.
So unfortunately, these days, men do have a role as an advocate. So you don't want that to be your only role where you're, sort of having to figure it out all the time. And that's where something like a doula or working with a midwife you trust is so important, so that you're not having to become an expert in birth. But if you are, which many couples are, in a situation where they're in a hospital or a birth center with just whoever is going to show up, then you want to really be clear on what the birth plan is so that you can be an advocate. So that if they're saying, do you need an epidural? You can say, actually, she doesn't want chemo unless she asks for it. Don't ask her.
It's so true. And this is where the logistics are really helpful.
Exactly.
And the time to do those is not during birth.
Because she's not going to be able to communicate with you.
No.
At that moment. It's two. You see, you need to have, and that's the best use of a birth plan. It's just like, we are all clear on what wants to happen here. Of course, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but as long as everything's good with mother and baby, this is what we're going to do.
Right. So it's like, if this, then that.
Exactly.
And when you have that, your system can relax and you can be
Exactly.
Great. Anything else for things that guys often get wrong in the role of man in birth?
I think men often think they are not part of the flow of how labor and birth goes. And I had a birth recently, a little while ago, where we were doing everything with the mom, and she was doing amazing, very complicated history, so we knew there was going to be stuff, and doing all the beautiful inner work with her, and things were progressing, but I could feel something in the whole dynamic of the whole family was not quite right. And I spoke to the dad just separately alone, and I just brought her to him. I said this, we know each other well. Said, this is what's happening, and I don't feel like this is just her, something in your whole, because, I always talk about the dynamics of the family and coleus. It's never one in the whole. Whatever seems to be happening to one person, always in that whole system. And he, we're sort of talking about this and that, and he turned to me and he said, I know what it is. And it was sort of it was a subtle thing, but he'd done all this preparation for himself, and then he kind of went, okay, this is her thing, unconsciously, hadn't thought of it, was like, okay, this is her thing now, but I'm just the support, but this is her thing. And it was like the baby was going, no, come on. Like he'd really pulled himself back emotionally. There were some complexities to it. So anyway, I said, just take a few minutes first, just because he was going to run in there. And I was like, take a few minutes. And he took a few minutes to really get grounded deep in himself and then walk back in there. And then she had the baby.
Wow.
It was amazing. And it was beautiful because he really got his role as a dad. It's like he became a father in that moment. Because then it was like, okay, it's not just I'm an integral part of this. I'm not just a side player that, could be here or not be here. This baby and this mother, like this whole system here, we are completely entwined. And that's true for every birth. It's just, we don't always see it so directly.
Yeah, that's, one of the main reasons why I want to do this interview with you, because there's such a big difference between being there and like really showing up and like really being there. And that's the thing that I don't hear talked about so often. There's a lot of preparation and what to do when this happens, but like that dynamic you're talking about, where it's not her baby and you, where it really is this.
Lots of twists in there.
And then those three, it's like, it's all of you. And that's where this energetic, physical, spiritual, emotional comes into it, if you choose it to. What is one thing, I think we're getting towards the end though, it's almost like the advice is there by what not to do, but what is it that men can do in birth? Like what is the one or two things you'd be like, I just wish the father would
do this, yeah. So the first is the inner hormonal state.
Yeah.
The second is presence. As much as she wants it there. Sometimes in order for it to have both of those things, it needs taking time away. Right, because you can't necessarily guarantee that you're going to have a positive state, where you're going to feel relaxed and calm. And if you hadn't eaten or drank or had a pee for 6 hours or whatever, and you're like, okay, I need 5 minutes. So it's very different being half present, still on meeting your needs, to very intentionally going and meeting your needs for 5 minutes or 20 minutes, having a short nap, getting some food, bathroom break, whatever it is. So intentionally meeting your needs so that you can be there, but also knowing that you can go way beyond those things. I don't know if you've anything endurance you've ever done, even just climbing a big mountain. You're exhausted a quarter way up, and then you have just as much energy at the top because you realize I'm nowhere near my, end of my endurance. So it's not that I mean you have to feel great all the time. You want to push yourself a little bit. You're going through an experience as well. So you're not going to necessarily go, oh, it's been 2 hours and to go eat. If you're right in the middle of it, you might go, it's fine. I feel good. I don't need to go. And at the same time, recognizing I have needs. So inner, emotional, mental health, hormonal state, presence, and then any physical skills are just so valued. Because having loving touch from somebody who loves you is the best kind of touch there is. And because the pain of labor, like actual physical intensity of labor for women, is completely hormonally mediated. And it's mediated by the hormone oxytocin and endorphins, and all of those are hormones of love and bonding and connection and pleasure. And so you can bring that oxytocin, that endorphin, the love, the connection, the sensuality. Often not sexuality sometimes, but it's usually more that sensuality through loving touch and connection. And again, that could be firm, intense, because loving, sensuality in women especially is not always this like light and fairy thing, right? It might be very loud, very primal, very intense. And so it might be that she needs strong pressure, or it could be gentle touch, or it could be something soothing, but bringing touch, especially this skilled touch in the sense that practiced it during the pregnancy. So beautiful for women in labor, beautiful babies to experience. Then at the actual, and I think the fourth one I would say is what you talked about. It's like you really hold that. You're really holding the, you're being the banks of the river, so that she can be in whatever emotional, doubting herself. Can I do it? All of that can be happening, and you're just holding space for that. Because that is the main role of a father at the birth, is I am holding space for the life to come through. In order to do that, you're holding hers because she's birthing that life.
It's such a beautiful thing, isn't it? Like, you get the most space for life to be birthed. It's like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And that means really opening your heart, because that being present is not a hard presence. It's like, okay, here I am being present. It's like full open heart going, like she's going through. Okay, women have pain-free births. Most of the time, for most women, there's a lot of physical intensity involved. So really to be open to that, not kind of closed off and like, I'm holding space, I'm at the front of a cave, but it's this real, I'm feeling, I'm letting in the emotions, the intensity of this whole experience. And when you do that, at the moment of birth, you then have the full cycle of hormones. Like you get the release and go into the endorphins and everything because you're part of the cycle. The more held back a man is, the less they're feeling that whole emotional cycle at the moment of birth.
I'm glad you mentioned that because there is such a thing of men switching to a holding space to being like, I'm here.
Yes,
I'm present. And an antidote and something that really helped me in the last birth. We had the privilege of being able to ice bath daily, and we would treat it as a labor prep. So Megan would get in the ice bath and we'd breathe together and we would sound together. And it's the sound that I wanted to mention because I greeted every wave, every contraction wave with Megan. Basically 99% of them birth with Latham. But I also sounded with her. And there was something alchemical in that sound where it wasn't me going, I'm going to hold you while you sound and experience this, but actually adding my voice and my energy that created a circle and a cycle that had me more involved and her more permission and her feeling me more and the whole thing. So I think that sound is a really beautiful antidote to the I'm going to be here holding presence because you're actively engaged.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think finding something as an antidote. So if she's not making sound at that moment, it might not be sound.
Sure.
So it could be going of, hey, I'm realizing I'm a bit frozen, Because that's sort of, there's usually a contraction, physical contraction that's involved in that. Okay, I'm holding space, feeling like I'm going to be present now. So physical movement, moving towards touching her, actually really paying attention just to what sensations are in her or in yourself. So it's like, what's actually happening right now? Am I actually present or am I just holding something? So that means becoming aware of inner sensations. What's actually happening here, what's actually happening there.
Yeah.
Physical movement together. Notice sound I love because it brings you right into it. And there's something alchemical about sound also specifically because it opens you and then it connects you on that sound wave frequency physically. Just like, when you hit crystal, anything else in that same frequency around the room will resonate in that same frequency. So it literally brings you into resonance. Actually, in a physical way, brings all the cells in your body into resonance with her. So there's something alchemical about sound.
I think at least one last thought for me as well as, we were the moment sitting in Bali and there's that great quote which is when you make plans, God laughs. And we have a lot of gods in Bali. So I think, this hard conversation is so needed and so necessary. But it's the part of my brain when I hear information like, I have to do this, because then everything's going to be okay and I'm prepared to do the thing. But in actual fact, you can't be prepared until you've been through it. And even if you have gone through it, the second one's not going to be like the first one. So I just want to give all the men some space and some compassion to that part that it's really hard to sit with. I'm going to prepare as best I can, and I have no fucking idea what can happen. Which is why I love your emphasis on the inner state. Because the one thing that I can work on that I know in any situation that occurs is how I respond. And that's at least in preparation, the journaling, the question answering, the meditation, the being with difficulty or pain and just
being with.
Just being with yourself and with your partner is so valuable.
And I would say, I would even turn that around is we don't prepare so that everything goes well. We prepare so that if things go a little sideways, we can still keep the sail, going the right way. And that's really it, because it is going to be unexpected. Children are unexpected.
Yeah.
Even if the birth is so much easier than you think, then there's going to be things. There will be things. So that's why to prepare in that inner sense, so that it's like, okay, I've still got this, even though this is a bit rocky.
Is there any last words you want to say to the men or women watching?
The biggest thing, again, is just that really deeply understanding how connected you are to the baby as men. That it's not something that's just women's business, even though the physicality of pregnancy and birth are women's business, that we're intimately involved in every part of that. And that the more connected you want to be, the more your baby will receive that. And of course, your partner as well. So just to really hold that knowing of your own importance as men in the whole process. It's not a sort of second role down here. It's really a teamwork, a connected process.
I love that as efficient finishing them. I would totally recommend people to seek you out online. You have an amazing course that's got so much prep work and so many different things you would never have thought of to bring into birth. How can they find either the course or find you?
at Conscious Birth Community on Instagram or consciousbirthcommunity.com is the website. And that's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Amazing. And I also know your schedule is really full, but even if you're overseas and not in the same country, you often do Zoom sessions.
Yeah,
And
I
you
do
may not
birth
attend
preparations,
birth,
that's right. Yeah, so I do the pre-birth, pregnancy, post-birth for couples. Because the thing that we didn't get to talk about today is it's couple relationship, couple connection, and how that impacts the whole thing. It's another whole subject, but yeah, that's what I work with pre-birth, because preparing for birth is always more than that. It's really, you want to prepare for the birth, but you still want to have a relationship at the end of the first couple of years of life.
Yes, totally. And as I said in the beginning, every time we came and spoke with you, we felt so reassured and so calm. And what felt so important is scratching your forehand mounted in your presence. So I think I'll finish the same way I started with. So thank you very much, Lianne, for both your support of Megan and I so many times, not just the birth. And also thank you for joining me here today.
Well, thank you for doing this. I love this project. I'm excited about it. And it's something that really needs. Well done.
Amazing.